Lira Kenwick had always believed her life was ordinary, married to the charming and dependable Darven Kenwick, living in a quiet neighbourhood, and occasionally visited by her elegant but overbearing mother, Cyrene Halden. But nothing about her life was ordinary the moment she discovered that her husband had fathered a child with her own mother. What began as a seemingly perfect family portrait quickly unravelled into a web of betrayal, manipulation, and unthinkable deceit that would leave everyone shattered. This is the chilling true crime story of a husband, a mother, and the daughter caught in the darkest secret imaginable. Lira Monette's life looked like a perfect picture, calm, happy, and enviable. At 29, she had everything she ever wanted. Her cozy two-story house nestled on a quiet cul-de-sac in Boulder, Colorado, gave her a sense of safety and pride. Her husband, Darven Holt, was successful, charming, and loyal, at least as far as she knew. He worked as a lead designer at a boutique architecture firm and often came home talking about modern blueprints and high-end residential clients. Lira, a dental hygienist with a gentle smile and a nurturing heart, was deeply in love with the life they'd built together. Their marriage, going strong for over 6 years, had always seemed solid to friends and neighbours. There were no outward signs of strain or secrets. Lira's mother, Cyrene Monette, was a vibrant woman in her early 50s. She had raised Lira as a single parent, and their bond had always been tight. Cyrene was a retired yoga instructor who took pride in her wellness routines and youthful looks. Even at her age, she had the energy and figure of someone half her age. She wore flowing scarves, large gemstone earrings, and used essential oils for everything from sleep to headaches. Cyrene had been single for many years, bouncing between short relationships, but never settling down again. When Lira invited her to stay for a few weeks during her post-surgery recovery, it felt like a natural thing to do. She wanted her mother close. She needed help during her healing period and trusted no one more. At first, everything was as expected. Cyrene cooked healthy meals, organized the pantry, and even set up a meditation corner in the living room. She got along well with Darven, who was polite and respectful. The three of them would have breakfast together, share evening walks, and watch movies in the living room. Lira appreciated how helpful Cyrene was and was glad to see her mother and husband getting along so well. But slowly, small details began to nag at Lira. At first, it was the subtle scent of her mother's favorite jasmine oil lingering on Darven's t-shirts, even when he hadn't been near her bedroom. Then it was the way Cyrene started dressing a bit differently, more form-fitting, clothes, redder lipstick, even when staying in. Lira dismissed these thoughts as silly. Her mother was just eccentric, and Darven would never cross any boundaries. Still, her gut told her something felt off. Darven, who used to stay late at work, began coming home earlier than usual. He claimed his workload had eased and his firm was rotating staff. When Lira asked questions about his schedule, he gave vague answers and shifted topics. He started spending more time in the guest room, claiming he was helping Cyrene with technical issues or discussing family matters she didn't want Lira to worry about during her recovery. The red flags continued. One evening, Lira walked in to find them standing too close in the kitchen. They quickly stepped apart, acting normal, but their faces were slightly flushed. Another time, she caught Cyrene scrolling through Darven's social media photos, zooming in on images from their honeymoon. Again, she brushed it off. She trusted them. She had to. Anything else would feel like betrayal from both ends, and her mind wasn't ready to go there. The house's energy started to change. Lira began waking up in the middle of the night and hearing muffled footsteps outside her bedroom door. Once, she heard what sounded like low voices from the guest room at 2 a.m. She told herself Cyrene might have had trouble sleeping. Maybe Darven had gotten up to grab a drink, but when she asked them the next morning, both claimed they'd slept through the night. The tension grew, though neither of them ever gave her a reason to confront them directly. Darven became more affectionate during the day, bringing her tea, brushing her hair back while she sat on the porch. But at night, he often claimed he was tired and went to bed early. Cyrene, meanwhile, started pulling away emotionally. She spent more time on walks alone, more time texting someone in secret, and seemed increasingly restless, even irritable. Lira noticed her mother had started locking the door to the guest room, which she never used to do. Lira began to feel like a stranger in her own home. Her sanctuary felt different, colder, suspicious, full of whispers behind closed doors. Even the family dog, Hugo, avoided Cyrene now, opting to stay in Lyra's bedroom most of the time. She couldn't shake the feeling that something dark was growing beneath the surface, something no one was saying out loud. One afternoon, while Cyrene was out and Darven was supposed to be running errands, Lira noticed a missed call on the landline. It was from a clinic she didn't recognize. When she redialed, a woman on the other end answered, asking for Cyrene to confirm an appointment. Lyra's heart began to pound, but the receptionist couldn't give her any details without authorization. That night, Cyrene returned home in a different outfit than the one she left in, claiming she had spilled coffee and stopped by a friend's house to change. Lira nodded, but inside, everything in her wanted to scream. It wasn't just suspicion anymore, it was dread, and it was growing. She had lived for years thinking her life was peaceful and her relationships unbreakable. But now, the air in her home felt poisoned. Every smile seemed forced, every gesture laced with lies. She didn't know what she would find if she pushed harder, but she was starting to realize she had no choice. The perfect family image was cracking, and behind it, something much uglier was waiting to be seen. Lyra's mind wouldn't rest. Every glance between Darven and Cyrene now felt like a message she couldn't decode, and every locked door in her house felt like a gatekeeping a secret she wasn't meant to know. She wanted to believe she was overthinking, that her recovery from surgery had made her more sensitive and paranoid, but her instincts screamed otherwise. She began observing silently, choosing not to confront, but instead to watch, listen, and take mental notes. That's when the puzzle pieces began falling into place. One morning, while tidying up the bathroom, Lira spotted a discarded pregnancy test box jammed at the bottom of the trash can. Her hands trembled as she pulled it out. The wrapper was crumpled hastily, and the test itself was gone, but the box clearly read, "Early results, positive in 1 minute." Confused, Lira initially assumed one of the neighbors must have used the bathroom while visiting. But as she stood there, heart pounding, she realized only one woman had been using that particular bathroom recently: Cyrene. Still, Lira tried to reason with herself. Maybe her mother was just worried about something else. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe it was old. But the trash had just been taken out the day before. The timeline didn't add up. Trying not to jump to conclusions, Lira casually checked the guest room while Cyrene was at the grocery store. She found nothing incriminating until she opened the bottom drawer of the nightstand. Inside, under a folded scarf, was a receipt from a local clinic. The visit was recent, and although it didn't list specific medical information, the words "OBGYN intake" were clear on the top. Lyra's head began to spin. Could her mother really be pregnant? And if so, who was the father? The thought that it might be Darven clawed at her chest like a wildfire, but she couldn't bring herself to say it aloud, not even in her own mind. She needed answers. Real ones. Guesswork wasn't enough. She didn't tell anyone. Instead, she quietly reached out to a private investigation firm 2 towns over. It cost more than she could afford on her own, but she dipped into the savings account she shared with Darven. If he noticed the withdrawal, she would deal with it later. For now, she wanted the truth more than anything. The private investigator she hired was discreet and fast. Cameras were placed outside the house, catching movements near the guest room windows and garage. After just a few days, the footage revealed something shocking: Darven entering Cyrene's room late at night and not emerging until dawn. It happened more than once. Once could be an accident or concern for her well-being. Twice might be coincidence. But 4 nights in 1 week was no mistake. The PI didn't stop there. He pulled records that showed Darven had visited the same clinic listed on Cyrene's receipt. His appointment had been made under a private client code and paid for in cash. It was for a paternity consultation. The investigator dug deeper, and what he uncovered left Lira breathless. Darven had submitted a sample for DNA testing. Now everything came together. The sudden change in Darven's schedule, his avoidance at night, Cyrene's secretive behavior, the late-night footsteps, the locked doors, and now this, the DNA test. The conclusion felt inevitable. Darven Holt, Lira's husband, was the father of her mother's unborn child. Lira couldn't breathe. She paced her room, trying to process what this meant. Her mother, the woman she had trusted with her heart, her home, and her healing, had slept with her husband, and worse, carried his child. She thought of every moment they shared, every time they had all eaten together at the table, every laugh they'd shared on the patio. Lira had been the third wheel in her own marriage, and she hadn't even known it. The betrayal wasn't just physical, it was spiritual. It was a knife to the very soul of who she thought she was and what she thought her life meant. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. Not yet. She sat on the edge of her bed and stared at the wall, frozen in a kind of silence that felt louder than any chaos. Then she got up, went to the safe, and pulled out every important document. Bank papers, house deeds, insurance policies. She needed to protect herself now. Emotion could wait. Cyrene returned home that afternoon, glowing, claiming she had just gotten a massage. Darven followed shortly after, offering Lira takeout from her favourite Thai restaurant. Neither of them seemed to notice her cold eyes or the way her hands slightly shook. They thought their secret was safe, but Lira had already made up her mind. She wasn't going to confront them until she had every piece of evidence she needed. She copied the PI's report, saved the camera footage to a drive, and created an encrypted backup of everything. She documented every detail, every strange moment, and every inconsistency from the last few weeks. That night, as she lay in bed beside the man who had destroyed her life and pretended nothing had happened, Lyra stared at the ceiling, wide awake. She wasn't ready to tell them she knew, but she was ready to make them regret it. What she didn't know was that both Cyrene and Darven had also sensed something in the air, something different in Lyra's demeanour. And soon, their carefully hidden secret would spiral out of control. Lira had become a shadow in her own home. She moved silently, spoke little, and observed everything. Beneath her composed expression burned a rage she refused to show. The betrayal had scarred her, but it hadn't broken her. She was no longer trying to save her marriage or her relationship with her mother. Now, she was watching how far they would go to keep lying to her face. She kept smiling when needed, playing her part in the performance. But inside, she was documenting every move. The days felt like a waiting game. Darven and Cyrene continued their charade, eating dinner together, watching shows in the living room, acting like nothing was wrong. Occasionally, Cyrene would glance at Lira with a strange expression, something between guilt and challenge. Darven, on the other hand, remained disturbingly normal. He kissed Lira on the cheek in the mornings, brought her coffee, and talked about work deadlines, as if nothing had changed. Lira realized how deeply manipulative both of them truly were. They were treating her not like a loved one, but like a blind obstacle in their path. She decided it was time to dig even deeper. The PI had already found enough, but Lira needed to know the entire story, how long it had been going on, how it started, and if there were others involved. She went through Darven's old emails, searching through forgotten folders and archived conversations. That's when she found a hidden inbox synced to his cloud account. It was labelled innocuously, work notes, but inside were dozens of emails exchanged between him and Cyrene. They dated back nearly a year. The first few emails were seemingly innocent, casual messages about health, meditation techniques, and wellness books. But slowly, the tone shifted. Phrases became more flirtatious. Some messages hinted at meeting in secret, late-night encounters, and their undeniable connection. One message stood out above the rest. It was sent 4 months ago from Cyrene, saying she believed she was pregnant and that they needed to discuss the future. Darven's reply had been swift, urging her to keep quiet and promising they would figure things out without Lira ever knowing. Lira felt physically sick reading the messages. The emotional manipulation was layered and disgusting. Not only had they betrayed her physically, but they had also plotted to keep her in the dark, to move forward with their plans while still using her home, her trust, and her resources. But it didn't end there. While searching Darven's laptop, Lira came across a spreadsheet titled Private Goals. It looked like a personal document, a list of future plans with target dates, financial calculations, and even property options. On one tab was a line that read, Potential New Start, March 2025, Mountain Property with Cyrene. It was clear now. They were planning to leave, start fresh, and take everything with them. Realization struck like thunder. Lira wasn't just a collateral victim of an affair. She was a target. Her savings, her house, and her entire life had been treated like assets to be split, manipulated, and discarded. Cyrene had been living under her roof, taking advantage of her kindness, all while planning to raise a child with her son-in-law. Lira printed every document and filed them neatly into a black folder she kept hidden in the back of her closet. She labeled it contingency. She wasn't going to act out of impulse. She was going to strike with purpose. But then something unexpected happened. Late one night, Lira couldn't sleep. The weight of everything was crushing her from within. She left her room quietly and went to the kitchen for water. As she passed the guest room, she noticed the door wasn't fully closed. A soft light flickered from inside. Curiosity, or maybe instinct, drew her closer. She pushed the door slightly, and what she saw froze her in place. Cyrene was standing in front of the mirror, holding a tiny onesie in her hands, cradling it against her belly. She was talking softly to herself, whispering lullabies. Her face was serene, almost detached from reality. There was no remorse, no hesitation, only a disturbing calmness. Lira stepped back silently and returned to her room, her mind reeling. Cyrene was not just complicit, she was obsessed. She wasn't ashamed or afraid. She believed this child was her second chance at happiness, and she was willing to destroy her own daughter to get it. The next morning, everything felt different. Lira noticed Cyrene staring at her more than usual. There was something probing in her gaze, as if she suspected Lira knew. Darven, too, seemed more cautious, more reserved. Maybe they had picked up on Lira's subtle withdrawal. Maybe they felt the storm coming. Later that day, Darven handed Lira a brochure for a weekend spa retreat. He said it was a gift, a way for her to unwind and recover fully from everything. The gesture seemed thoughtful, on the surface. But Lira knew better. It wasn't a gift, it was a tactic. They wanted her gone, perhaps to finalize their plans, or worse. She took the brochure, smiled, and told him she'd consider it. That night, she packed a small bag, but not to leave. She went to a hotel 2 miles away, under a different name. She wanted to see what they would do once they believed. She was out of the way. Before leaving, she activated the backup security cameras she had installed discreetly around the house, all linked to her phone. By the next evening, Lira had more footage. Darven and Cyrene were alone. They talked openly, laughed, and toasted with wine. They sat close on the couch, his hand resting on her stomach. Then came the words Lira dreaded hearing. They began discussing how soon they could put the house on the market. After Lira agreed to a peaceful separation, Lira watched every moment from her hotel room, eyes locked on the screen. Her heart didn't break this time. It hardened. She had the truth, the plan, And the proof. Now, all that remained was execution. Lira returned home the next morning just after sunrise. Her expression was unreadable, calm but guarded, and neither Darven nor Cyrene suspected a thing. She thanked them for encouraging her to take time for herself and mentioned how refreshed she felt. Darven acted relieved, but his eyes flickered with something else. Maybe doubt, maybe fear. Cyrene offered a warm hug, her voice coated in false sweetness, completely unaware that every move they made in the past 24 hours had been recorded. Lira pretended to settle back into her daily routine, while in truth, every step she took was part of her carefully devised plan. She wasn't out for revenge in the traditional sense. She wanted justice in a way that would leave scars. She didn't want to scream or fight. She wanted to dismantle the illusion they had built, piece by piece. While they watched it crumble around them, she began moving funds into a separate account, quietly, without triggering alerts. She contacted a divorce attorney known for being aggressive and discreet. The documents were drafted quickly. Every asset, every detail of the betrayal was outlined, including the paternity test, emails, and video footage. The lawyer advised patience, and Lira nodded. Timing was everything. The bomb would drop soon, but not yet. Meanwhile, she continued gathering evidence. She collected voice recordings using a small device hidden in a plant near the living room. The conversations captured were damning. Darven talking about how he wished Lira would just make things easy, and Cyrene discussing moving to a remote cabin upstate where nobody would ask questions. It became clear to Lira that they weren't just in a relationship. They were trying to erase her from their future entirely. She found solace in controlling the narrative. They thought they were the masterminds. They didn't realize they were the ones being cornered. Each day, she chipped away at their false sense of security. She replaced household documents with altered versions, insurance forms, deeds, legal notices. Slowly, she removed her name from anything that could be manipulated against her and ensured she had full ownership of what mattered most. One day, Cyrene complained about severe abdominal pain. Lira offered to drive her to the hospital, pretending concern. At the clinic, Cyrene was admitted for monitoring. When asked if she had anyone else to call, she declined. Lira waited just long enough to see the discomfort on her mother's face before quietly walking away and leaving her there for hours. She wasn't trying to punish Cyrene physically, just make her feel the slow sting of abandonment. Let her sit in silence. Let her wonder if she was finally being discarded. When Darven questioned her later, Lira shrugged and said she thought Cyrene wanted space. His suspicion grew. The distance between them widened. That night, Lira saw them arguing in the guest room. She couldn't hear the words, but their body language said enough. The perfect couple was starting to fracture. The cracks widened further when a letter arrived at the house, one Lira had sent to herself anonymously. It contained printed copies of the email exchanges between Darven and Cyrene, with red ink circling the dates and comments about the pregnancy. On the last page it read, "This is only the beginning." Darven panicked. He blamed Cyrene, assuming she had been careless. Cyrene swore she never shared anything. The trust between them began to erode. Every glance turned sharp. Every word carried an edge. Lira watched from the sidelines, quiet and composed, savoring the chaos they had once created together, now consuming them both. But the most painful part was yet to come. Lira scheduled a private meeting with a family friend, Noreen, who also happened to be a real estate agent. She told her she was considering selling the house, claiming she needed a new start. Noreen was thrilled and agreed to help with the appraisal. Lira made sure Cyrene overheard the conversation. Later that night, Cyrene asked Darven if Lira was serious about selling. Darven brushed it off, but the seed of doubt had been planted. Lira had no intention of selling. She just wanted them to feel the floor beneath them shifting. It was at that point that Cyrene tried to intervene. She sat down with Lira one afternoon, pretending to apologize, offering a vague confession about making mistakes. She tried to frame herself as lost, desperate, and emotionally fragile. Lira listened quietly, nodding where appropriate, not revealing a single crack in her mask. Cyrene seemed relieved, thinking perhaps Lira was forgiving her. But as soon as she left the room, Lira opened her hidden folder, added the audio recording of the conversation, and closed it without a second thought. That night, Lira finally opened the divorce papers and reviewed them one last time. Every clause had been revised to her favor: custody of property, financial independence, full claim to the house. There was also a restraining order clause, something Lira insisted on. The lawyer would file them the next morning. She wasn't just leaving Darven, she was erasing both him and Cyrene from her future. Before sleeping, Lira uploaded all the audio, video, and documents to 3 secure cloud backups, labeled only with initials. She had also scheduled 2 emails to send automatically within 48 hours, one to Darven's employer and the other to Cyrene's meditation community. They contained only one thing: a short message and a file titled Confession. Everything was in place. She lay in bed, listening to the silence of the house. Outside, the wind rustled through the trees. Inside, 2 people were completely unaware that the world they had built from lies was about to collapse. Lira closed her eyes and slept peacefully. For the first time in months, the sun rose gently over the neighborhood, casting a golden hue across the neat row of houses. To any outsider, Lira's home looked serene, unbothered by the chaos brewing inside. But within those walls, tension pulsed like electricity in the air. The final act had begun, and everything was about to fall apart. The morning started like any other. Darven brewed his coffee in the kitchen, while Cyrene sat in the living room reading, pretending everything was normal. Lira moved quietly, expression unreadable, as she mentally prepared for what she knew would be the most pivotal day of her life. Her lawyer had filed the divorce petition at sunrise. The emails had been scheduled to send by noon. Every recording, every document, every proof of betrayal was already in motion. By mid-morning, Lira left the house without a word. She didn't pack a suitcase or carry a bag. All she had was a folder of documents under her arm and her phone, tucked into her coat. She drove to a nearby hotel where she had reserved a suite for the week. She didn't plan to return to the house. Not anymore. Back at the house, Darven's phone buzzed. An email. The subject line was short and chilling. "Read this." Attached was a zipped file titled Confession. Curiosity turned to panic as he opened it. There were voice recordings, some transcribed, along with surveillance footage of him and Cyrene. In one clip, they could be seen embracing in the guest room. In another, they discussed Lira's mental state, with Darven suggesting she might need to disappear if she kept getting in the way. His face paled as he realized how deeply compromised he was. At the same moment, Cyrene's phone buzzed too. The same email had reached her inbox. Only hers came with an additional message. "I wonder what your meditation group will think about your spiritual journey into deception and incest." Her hands trembled as she listened to herself speak in the recordings. Mocking Lira, laughing, about the affair, boasting about the pregnancy like it was a trophy. Her carefully curated image of healing and wisdom shattered with each audio clip. Darven and Cyrene stared at each other across the living room. The panic that gripped them was now mutual, no longer shadowed by illusions. They knew Lira had set them up, and they had no clue how deep it ran. Within the hour, the lawyer's courier arrived, handing Darven the divorce papers. Each page was a slap in the face. Lira wasn't just leaving him, she was taking everything. The house, the car, the savings, even the dog, which she had legally registered in her name weeks prior. The last page contained a formal notice of a restraining order, effective immediately. Meanwhile, Lira sat at the hotel window watching the city move beneath her, sipping tea with calm precision. Her phone buzzed occasionally. Notifications from her attorney, emails confirming delivery, and a message from her bank confirming the final transfer. She didn't check social media, didn't scroll through messages. She wasn't interested in sympathy or validation. She was interested in silence, in closure. By late afternoon, the consequences of her revelations began rippling outward. Darven's employer called him into an urgent meeting after the anonymous email had circulated among senior staff. The company had a zero-tolerance policy for moral misconduct, especially in cases involving abuse of power. Darven had once spoken proudly of his position at the firm. By evening, he was placed on indefinite suspension, pending internal review. Cyrene fared no better. Her meditation circle had seen the clips, the voice of the woman who once led sessions on compassion and inner peace, now echoed with bitterness and manipulation. Her reputation crumbled. Several members cut ties immediately. The center's board asked her to step down as a volunteer coordinator. She had built her identity on lies, and now she was being buried by the truth. Back at the hotel, Lira began writing a letter, not out of spite, but as a final note to herself. It wasn't addressed to anyone. It simply detailed her experience, from the moment she suspected betrayal until now. Each page served as an emotional release, not to explain, not to justify, but to document the truth from her perspective. It ended with one sentence: "I chose to survive with my dignity intact." That night, the house was silent again, but this time it wasn't peaceful. Darven paced the halls in disbelief, his career in ruins, his marriage over, his lies exposed. Cyrene wept alone in the guest room, unsure if her child would even be born in a home or in shame. The woman she had dismissed as weak had outplayed her in every possible way. The final blow came the next morning, when a letter from Lira's attorney confirmed that she would be pressing for full ownership of the house due to infidelity and emotional abuse. Both Darven and Cyrene would need to vacate the premises within 30 days. A legal clause also granted Lira the right to have them removed earlier if she felt unsafe. They had lost everything: family, home, and dignity, not in a fiery explosion, but in a calculated dismantling. Lira never raised her voice. She never threw anything. She just watched and waited until the timing was perfect, then pulled every thread with surgical precision. In the weeks that followed, Lira's life slowly settled into something resembling peace. She didn't return to the same neighborhood. She didn't answer calls from mutual friends. She relocated to a quiet coastal town where no one knew her story. She found work at a local bookstore and spent her days surrounded by quiet people and quiet words, the kind of life she had once dreamed of living with Darven. There was no dramatic finale, no court confrontation, no tabloid headlines, just silence. And in that silence, Lira finally found what she had been searching for all along. Not revenge, not justice, but freedom. The scars were still there, but they no longer defined her. They reminded her of who she was before everything shattered, and how she had rebuilt herself from the ruins, alone but whole, broken once, but never again.